The Early Weigh-In podcast is back for UFC 263. This Saturday, we're in Glendale, Arizona, where we see a stacked pay-per-view. There's 3 5-round fights on the main card. And first up is an anticipated match between Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz. And then in the co-main and main event, we see the rematch for the flyweight and middleweight straps there. It's Figueiredo versus Moreno, and Adesanya versus Vettori. Before we get started, man, I'm going to pass it over to you to, cover last week, which – man, super close to being another clean sweep if we could have had a couple things go our way.
Yeah, man. Frustrating to say the least. I know it doesn't show it up on here, but we had 2 units on the Mason Jones-Alon Patrick fight doesn't go the distance. And that was on the way to hitting before that eye poke happened. That sucks. We hate to see that. And then on the second 2-unit play of the night, we had Makwan Amirkhani, which I'm not screaming robbery or anything, but for a judge to sit there with a straight face and give him a 30 or give Camilla a 30-27, got to be smoking crack for that to happen. Finally, we had our last 2-unit bet on Roman Dolidze, who really, did the old wet blanket and just laid and prayed, and we were okay with that. We needed that one to kind of minimize the losses. We ended up going negative 0.65 units for the weekend. Not what we were looking for, and like I said, if that eye poke wouldn't have happened, we would have been in the positive. But short-term memory, we do have an awesome lineup this week and a great pay-per-view. We actually start the fight card off in the heavyweight division, where we kind of see a lower level fight between a couple of big boys and Carlos Felipe, who's 10-1, taking on the prototype Jake Collier, who's 12-5. Felipe is one of the less impressive 10-1 fighters on the roster, if I'm being honest. He trains at a Life MMA in Brazil and is coming off that questionable split decision over Justin Tafa. Similar to Sakai last week, man, I got a lot of problems with the weight that Felipe carries. I just don't think that upper echelon of the heavyweight division that's gonna fly. You can't carry all that extra weight. And then on top of it, he's not even that big. He's only 6 foot tall. And I think once he gets up into those even against somebody like Sakai, that weight, that size is going to play a huge factor in his game and will ultimately kind of be his Achilles heel moving forward. And then on top of that, Felipe, he's kind of shown a mental problem where he's let his emotions get the best of him and not really think his game plan through. We kind of saw that in the Yorgan De Castro fight where he's constantly throwing up his hands. That's just not something I like to see. Then you move on to Jake Collier, and up until that last fight against Jan Vellante, it was kind of the butt end of a lot of jokes,
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that was probably the easiest fight in the division, and I think a lot of people are putting too much stock in it.
Yeah.
Although I'm not too high on Felipe, I do think that this is his fight to lose. How do you see this?
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you with a lot of things that you said. It's not the most exciting fight. It is our only set of heavyweights, and it's opening up the fight past prelims, if that tells you anything there. With Felipe, though, you're right. Kind of rather unimpressive in my opinion. The one loss does come to the prospect and Sergey Spivak, who has looked rather good lately. He has Felipe beat just about everywhere. There is one of the few heavyweights that is really good at grappling. And then you're right, the Yorgan De Castro, very less than impressive kind of fight. And the same with Tafa. I know we bet Felipe, but might not have deserved it that night, cashing that ticket. With Jake Collier, man, after the Aspinall fight and coming back the way he did, I was shocked to even see him get another fight with the UFC, to be honest. And you're lucky. It's the easiest fight in the heavyweight division that you can draw there with Jake Collier or with Gian Vellante. But, positives, he did show up looking a little bit in better shape. He did throw like almost 300 strikes, had a ton of volume that night. But, we've seen Felipe go the distance a couple times now. We've seen, the cardio is there for him. And maybe it is just a bunch of recency bias. But I just don't get all the Jake Collier love either, man. I don't take a lot away from beating Gian Vellante, especially at heavyweight. And if this line, keeps continuing to close, I might do something with Felipe, but the smart play here is probably to pass altogether.
I couldn't agree more. I think laying off is probably the smart decision, but Degen and both of us, we can both agree that Felipe, this is his fight to lose.
And it's the first fight on the card.
Yes, sir. We can't lay off of that. Going down to 155, we have the smile killer Faraz Ziam, who's 11-3, taking on the Italian stallion Luigi Vendramini. Faraz Ziam, he's fighting out of France, kind of jumping around gyms. I know via Instagram he's been getting some work in with Kevin Lee. Man, looking over his record, I am not impressed to say the least. Watching tape, you spend the majority of the time watching him get controlled against the cage. In his last two fights, he's really shown me nothing to be proud of. And I know that we might have a little hostility because we bet Malarkey in the last fight, but I think that I'm speaking objectively when I say that he's going to have to make some big improvements to get any wins in the UFC from what we've seen. Luigi, he's our motherfucking boy, man. I think a lot of people are sleeping on him, and to see the line move how it did, I'm pumped up, man. I think this is going to be his breakout party. Looking on Instagram, he's kind of moving in silence. He's trained a little bit at Factory X Muay Thai, some at the constrictor team in Brazil. We saw him on take on Zaleski dos Santos on short notice, a weight class up at 22 years old, and almost shocked the world.
Yeah.
He was this close, man. He was this close. I truly think at 155 he is a real contender, and his black belt, his power, he's going to shock the world, man. I really do. I really do think so.
Yeah, man, we really like Luigi there. This is a really fun fight as just to be the second fight on the card here. Great young prospects who are, coming off a win in their last outing here. And you're right, man. Styles make fights, and unless, Ziam has patched up a lot of those wrestling holes, Luigi could find a lot of success wrestling there. And we're really, really high on Luigi. We've already released, a play on him straight weeks ago. And the fact that we got plus money, even to, we decided to play a little bit more on him there. With Ziam, though, he's a real big, tall lightweight there. He uses his jab and his kicks to keep you at range there. He's got that kickboxing background and everything to rely on. But, even with that kickboxing background, he doesn't just show flaws in the grappling, man. His striking defense is not really the best either. He circles with the chin up, relies on the head movement rather than keeping his hands up, sort of the tall man defense we see a lot of those longer frame fighters fall victim to. On the side with Luigi, I mean, he just fought Jesse Ayari, who's a 6 foot lightweight himself. I don't see him having much trouble with the 6'1" and Ziam here. With Luigi, man, he looked awesome. He got a great calf kick, great left hook. He can counter you so fast. And when he gets to body lock, man, you're going for a ride. When I look and watch Ziam's tape, man, he's getting taken down by Malarkey, by Don Madge, really, really easily. And one thing you got to take into fact here, man, is that Luigi is a very, very talented black belt on the mat. That's something that Madge and Malarkey just aren't, man. And I really do think that we're going to see Luigi have way more success keeping Ziam down and maybe even finding the submission on the mat on Saturday.
I love to see it. I'm not sure what the Luigi inside the distance is, but that'd be something else I'd be interested in. It looks like it's a plus 250. That's something else I know I'm going to be taking a sprinkle on. We're already, like you said, we're already pretty big on Luigi. But damn, dude, I'm super excited to see him kind of start picking up that steam at only 25 years old at 155.
You and me both, man.
Mm-hmm. We move down to the featherweight division where we see Stephen Ocho Peterson, who's 18-9, taking on the Dream Chase Hooper, who's 10-1-1. Stephen Peterson, he's training out of Fortis MMA. Looking down his record, it's a little spotty. And to be honest with you, I think that this is pretty good matchmaking, especially for Chase Hooper, who has shown some pretty big holes in his last few fights. And it really makes you question if he's ready for the UFC at this point. He's only 21 years old, so it's not far-fetched to kind of assume that there are some things that he still needs to learn before he can compete in the UFC. But I do think that Ocho is a great opportunity for him to kind of test his skills. At this point in time, though, I kind of have narrowed Chase Hooper down as a sub or bust type of fighter. If he's not controlling you on the ground, he's getting dominated in just about any area of MMA. I think Peterson has the edge in striking, wrestling, strength, all that. But, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's the ultimate equalizer. And similar to our Mackenzie Dern, Verna Jandaroba prediction, Stephen Peterson's got the type of game with his takedowns that kind of plays right into Chase Hooper's game. I got to imagine Peterson's going to want to keep this on the feet. But if it does wind up on the mat, I think that it could get really, really tricky.
Yeah, man, this is a tricky fight altogether. Steven Peterson, we haven't seen him since September of 2019. He's had a couple injuries and elbow surgeries that have lingered there to keep him out, but looking to pick up where he, left off with that spinning back fist of Martin Bravo, put him out cold, earned himself a couple, 50 G's that night. But Peterson, what he's got going for him, man, he's really experienced. He spent a lot of time in LFA fighting quite a few names that we've seen eventually make it to the UFC. With Fortis, there's a lot of low level or lower weight class grapplers there for him, to get the work in with on the daily. Great coach, and in some of his interviews, they were openly asking for this fight with Chase Hooper, and I really can see why. If you can, if you can close any type of distance on Chase Hooper and beat that leg up, you can have a lot of success with him. But Chase Hooper, ton of hype behind this kid at 21 years old. He's been a significant favorite in all three of his UFC fights so far. He debuts against Daniel Tamer, the really bad one, the winless in the UFC, I'm pretty sure. And he has a flawless performance. He takes him down, makes quick work of him up on the mat. And he comes in at a minus 230 against the veteran and Alex Caceres. And I mean, from bell to bell, Caceres showed him what was up and showed him he just wasn't ready for that yet. And, you know, you combine that with how bad he looked against, Peter Barrett for legitimately 12, 13 minutes of that fight. I find it weird that it's a pick 'em here with Steven Peterson because we haven't seen the best of Chase Hooper lately. He's striking defense is very, very poor. The kid doesn't get his head off the center one bit. His chin is way up in the air. He's got those skinny legs that you can chop down, and at 6'1", it's hard to get under the hips like you talk about all the time with some of these featherweights. You don't see Chase Hooper shooting doubles and singles from open space. Man, and then I go back to him not having any kind of power. Steven Peterson's just going to walk through any kind of punch I think Chase Hooper throws at him. Chop the lead leg down, man. I won't be shocked if Steven Peterson gets the W here. To be aligned at a pick'em after Chase Hooper has looked pretty awful against the same level of competition that Steven Peterson is right now. I think Steven Peterson at pick'em odds could be a gift come Saturday, man.
I don't hate the prediction at all. Chase Hooper still has a lot to prove. It just, like you said, the power is another huge thing. He's a true 155er who just hasn't grown into his body yet. And yeah, you could convince me. Come fight night. I think I'll watch a little bit more tape on Steven Peterson, and maybe I'd be a little bit more inclined to jump on board with you and kind of bet that for the podcast.
Absolutely, I heard that.
Mm-hmm. Moving down yet again to the 135-pound division, we see Pannie Kianzad, who's 14-5, taking on Alexis Alligator Davis, who's 20-10. Never thought I'd say this, but Pannie is coming off a 3-fight win streak in the UFC. She's fighting out of Arte Suave in Denmark with Damir Hadzovic, and she's been around the block. She's coming up on a decade of pro MMA experience. She's been through the Ultimate Fighter, and at 29 years old, it kind of seems like she's finally putting together all those tools and really rounding out her game. Or Alexis Davis, from what I've seen online, she's definitely a popular underdog this week. She's 36 years old, but has lost 3 of her last 4 fights. So momentum definitely isn't in her favor. She's a longtime Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and has a win over the GOAT of the women's MMA. And I think that that's enough for a lot of people to kind of lean her in this matchup where Pannie has kind of showed some deficiencies in her ground game. I personally think that this is a coin flip matchup. I'm not going to be betting Alexis Davis regardless of the odds. I think that this is one that I'm maybe going to drink a beer and eat my food during this fight. What about you?
Yeah, man. With Pannie, you talked about her probably hitting her groove right now, man. On the Ultimate Fighter, it's up at 145, and she loses in the finale to Macy Chiasson. But like a lot of those girls, she dropped down to her natural weight class there, bantamweight, where she used to, and she's 3-1 and riding that 3-fight win streak. Fighting Jessica Rose Clark, 30-27, beat her bell to bell, flawless victory. Her striking looked on point. She stayed in her face with incredible volume. And then she draws Betch Correa. We play a 2-unit on Pannie Kianzad at minus 135, which was a steal of a line, against Betch. Now we see her even more of a favorite against Alexis Davis. But the last outing against Sijara Eubanks, She did take the last 2 rounds pretty easily there, but that first round, she spent almost the entire round on her back, not being able to get up. And then you combine that with the way Alexis Davis just beat Sabina Mazo. And, I kind of see why people are taking the dog shot on Alexis Davis. And props to you if you did better against her, in a return fight against Sabina Mazo. I told you about it earlier. We laid off, but ultimately looking back, Mazo was the Alexis Davis easiest UFC opponent to date by far. Alexis Davis challenged Ronda Rousey for the belt at one time. You talked about her, not only beating Amanda Nunes, she finished Amanda Nunes. Vivian Araujo is another girl, that is really good to mention. And then she fights 7 other title challengers throughout her career. She's been in there with truly the best of her divisions there. And she very well could be just a takedown or 2 away from stealing the decision against Pannie here. But one thing that kind of leads me to not play her is, she came out and executed a great game plan in round 1 and round 3 against Mazo, going for the takedowns. But round 2, she just completely abandoned it, and she decided she was going to strike with Alexis or with Sabina Mazo and dropped around there. And I can't trust the fight IQ enough. I think Pannie's a little bit better, can make it a little more interesting. It's just a dog or pass situation here with a wide line in females MMA. And if you're going to take the shot on Alexis Davis, I think you probably sweeten it a little bit and beef it up with her by decision.
So I was going to let you slide with Sabina Mazo being her easiest opponent, but any chance I get to diss on Cindy Dandois, I'm going to take it, okay?
Hey, she's got a big fight in PFL coming up with Kayla Harrison.
Yeah, she sure does. Good luck with that one. I'm with you. You made some good points about Alexis Davis, man. I think that it is a dog or pass situation, but like I said, I don't think anybody's going to lose sleep if they lay off this fight, whoever wins this one.
I'm with you, man.
Back up to the featherweight division where we see Hakeem Dawodu, who's 12-1-1, taking on Movsar Evloev, who's 14-0. Another fight where I know that a lot of people are kind of thinking that the line is off. Not me personally. Hakeem is 12-1 with his only loss coming in his UFC debut, and his last 2 fights are coming by split decision. And Movsar is pretty easily his hardest opponent to date. Hakeem kind of strikes me as one of those guys who really relies on his strength and athleticism to get into to this stage. Where I look at Movsar, and honestly, he's one of the brighter prospects in the division. After watching tape, I think he's pretty much solid everywhere and leaves little holes open for his opponents. Initially, I didn't like the move up to featherweight, but after the current state of bantamweight, I kind of see where he's coming from. He's training out of American Top Team, and at 27 years old, I think that he has a ton of potential, man. He's coming off that Nick Lentz split decision, which is not a split decision. He won that pretty decisively, and I don't really understand how a judge could have given that to Nick Lentz. I'm going to lean Movsar, but I'm not going to be wanting to bet him for the podcast. I might put him in a couple of 2-3 fighter parlays, but it's not one that I couldn't see Hakeem landing a huge bomb and kind of making it tricky here.
Yeah, this is a super exciting fight on Saturday. And when you see a fight like this opening up the ESPN prelims, you have an excellent card ahead of you. 2 wonderful prospects, man, who have really hit their groove lately. Hakeem's on a 5-fight win streak himself, and we, see Movsar yet to lose a fight. Movsar is a guy that I really, really like, man. Being the Russian good wrestler, you're always going to have to pay that extra little price if you want to play him. But relentless cardio, man. The guy can chain wrestle. He wears on you late. He's incredible in the scramble game. His striking is improving. He fights really well behind the jab. And he, being the bantamweight there at M1, he's got a great footwork and speed up here at featherweight. And, I will say he kind of leaves the neck out more than you like to see. You've seen Grundy and Nick Lentz both put him in some deep submissions. But, for those 2 guys to not be able to capitalize on that, I don't see Hakeem being the one to capitalize on any type of submission. He's going to have to get the KO here, and I think Movsar is just too defensively sound, too good of a wrestler here. As Hakeem's just, like you said, pure, really athleticism there, good power, relies on it way too much. His volume's kind of low. He has a good calf kick, and, earlier this year he pulled out of a fight, so it's like I don't know where his body's at either. Man, Movsar's not going to go out here and miss weight like Zubaira did and gas. He's he's better than Kyle Bochniak, who you're pulling split decisions with. And, it is a tall price to pay, but I see a 30-27, easy 29-28 unanimous decision coming from Movsar. The wrestling's just going to be the difference on Saturday.
Yeah, so I'm curious what it looks like. Mofsar by decision is at plus money in some places. It's minus 130 in other places. So you'd still have to pay a little bit just to get that. That might be how I play it as well. I don't see Mobstar getting getting a finish here. So if I was going to play this, I don't mind that decision prop at all.
Yeah, I'm right there with decision, man. I think he takes this, like I said, probably 30-27, just dominates with the wrestling every round. He's pretty much been a decision machine throughout his UFC career so far.
Yeah, I don't hate that. We move to our women's flyweight division where we see Lucky Lauren Murphy, who's 14-4, taking on Joanne Calderwood, who's 15-5. Lauren Murphy, our second favorite dog on the card that we have yet to tell anybody about. We think she's getting wildly disrespected right here. You look at her, she's 37 years old, but she's not a normal 37-year-old, man. She is absolutely yoked. And she's strung together a 4-fight win streak. And if she wins this one, it'll be tough to not hear her out about her reasoning for a title shot here, Joanne Calderwood, she's training out of Syndicate MMA and is looking to avenge that loss of her teammate Roxy. She's coming off of that win over Jessica Ai, which she desperately needed after dropping the ball against Jennifer Maia to stay active. I know I really hated that she took that fight in the first place, and she paid for it, man. Volume-wise, JoJo nearly doubles Murphy in the stats, but for that to mean anything, she's going to need to stay off her back, and that's something I don't think she's going to be able to do against Lauren Murphy, who will get that takedown.
Mm-hmm. I'm right there with you. Lauren Murphy is, opened up, I think, a minus 110. Now she's approaching the plus 130 range. We're just looking to ride that out, man, and get the best line we can later in the week. She's the definition of just hard work and grit, man. She's making good of her second opportunity with the UFC. First time around, 1-3, but she's in there with 3 title challengers, man. Good competition. And he throw her on tough, unsuccessful there. I know Nico hasn't panned out too much, but Nico was the winner that season who put her out. And, since getting back in the UFC, like you said, a 4-fight win streak, man, including wins over Roxy on Andrea Lee, who just got a win a couple weeks ago. We saw her finish Mara Borella and Lilia Shakarova. She kind of was making, the argument for a title shot in that before that Lilia fight. She was supposed to take on Cynthia Calvillo, who I'm sure – I didn't really look into it, but I'm sure had a botched weight cut, and intercepts Lilia Shakarova on short notice, and second round gets on top of her, finds the submission, and ultimately has to take one more fight here to earn her title shot. But Joe, what I like about Lauren Murphy, man, the girl's real patient. She's really good at cutting the cage off, throw her shots real straight down the middle. She's not wasting a lot of energy, and she's really good, at framing your head off in the clinch to look for her knees. And, man, I really do think if she can make JoJo wrestle, she's going to take a lot of steam out of her come, later in the rounds. JoJo, not really on the same kind of win streak. She's only 2-2, and found herself in this number 1 contender fight. And, it really is because she was scheduled to fight Valentina, and like you said, she did not have to take that fight with Jennifer Maia, ended up dropping the ball. And, if she comes out here and loses to Lauren Murphy on Saturday at 35 years old, taking that fight with Jennifer Maia and losing could be the absolute biggest mistake of her career. It's probably back of the line at that point.
She'll have to go on a win streak like Lauren Murphy's on right now.
Get win 4 or 5 more in a row to earn her shot back there. It's at 257, against Jessica Ai. She did look pretty good, though, man. The volume was incredible. That fight was fought at an unreal pace. Going into the corner round 2, where John Wood, her husband there, the head coach at Syndicate, was telling her, you got to slow down. He knew she didn't have that in the tank. And, man, I think Lauren Murphy can go out here and make her grapple a whole bunch, take some steam off of her. We see JoJo with that Muay Thai background. She don't move her head whatsoever. I think Lauren's going to be able to land some of her shots. And JoJo loves that clinch, man, a lot. And when she gets in that clinch with Lauren Murphy, I think she'll feel that strength. And I think Lauren will be able to capitalize on some of those takedowns. And, another women's fight that'll probably hit the scorecards, but you give me Lauren Murphy at plus money here, and I'm going to take that, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to play that. And it's shocking that nobody's jumped on it to date. They might be doing the same thing and just letting that line ride up. But I also haven't seen any love on her online either. So we might be on an island here, but I'm looking forward to it on Saturday.
Me too, man.
We move up to the light heavyweight division where we see your boy Eryk Anders, who's 13-5, taking on the Darren the Dennis Stewart, who's 12-6. It's a really unique matchup where we not only 3 months after their first meeting, but we also see it in a different weight class. I know the lines have practically flipped since their first fight, which I find kind of funny considering how close it was. I expected this line whenever it got rebooked to kind of be a pick 'em, but it's not. I don't know if you could justify a minus 150 on Eryk Anders right now. I rewatched that fight today, and it looked like Darren Stewart was the far faster fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of getting controlled on the cage, and I don't really know what happened there. It seemed like both guys gassed in an instant. And to be honest with you, I think that it's going to be a similar showing here. I think that it'll be a shit show after round one, and one of the guys is going to go to sleep. I don't know who it's going to be, but that's why I'm pretty happy with our play on fight doesn't go the distance at plus money. Just let me sit back and enjoy this fight. I think that it's guaranteed violence, and I'm much happier with just betting on it not seeing the judges than trying to pick a side here.
You're right, man. I love the play that we made on the fight doesn't go to decision. Your middleweights at plus money. I know you love it a lot there. But, from seeing the way that the first fight was going, Honors was so close to finishing that fight. Now that it's up at light heavyweight where, Honors' cardio has been atrocious in the past, I think that doesn't go to the decision at plus money was the right play to make here in this fight. With Eryk Anders, he's made the move to fight ready, looked in incredible shape in that last fight with Darren Stewart. They were talking about it looked like the best shape he's came in his career. And now, you've got the pay-per-view there in Arizona, so he's not having much of a travel whatsoever, where Darren Stewart's having to fly all the way across the ocean and country there from England. But he's not having to do the weight cut this time since it's at light heavyweight, and he was the light heavyweight champion at Cage Warrior, so he has experience there. He hits hard, and you touch on him, man. He's deceptively fast, and although Anders is the natural athlete, the football player, the speed is definitely on the side of Darren Stewart here. It just looked like when Eryk, touched that chin, it did a little bit more damage there to the dentist. I just feel like if he hurts him this time, maybe be a little bit more patient. He kind of pulled a Walt Harris, kind of went for the kill, started to slow down a little bit. Man, I don't know. Like you said, as it's a creeping up the minus 150, it is a little bit too much that you want to look at playing on Eryk Anders, especially since he was plus money that first time around. But man, that we see a finish here, plus money, I love it.
For our prelim main event, we drop down to the 155-pound division where we see Drew Dober, who's 23-10, taking on Brad Quake Riddell, who's 9-1. Drew Dober's a 16-fight UFC vet who has looked like he was really starting to find his stride before his last fight. In all fairness, Islam's a really tough opponent to look good against, so I don't take too much from him for losing that one. He trains at a Team Elevation in Colorado, which is something that he needs because in the past he has shown some cardio issues. On paper, this should be a stand-up war, but I'm curious to see who, if anyone, will be shooting for that takedown. Brad Riddell, he's coming into his fourth UFC fight and has strung together a solid first three UFC wins. He's kind of already shown that he can overcome those obstacles against some of the wrestlers in the division. And, ultimately, I think Brad Riddell is good, but I don't believe he's really shown enough to me to think that he's necessarily level or up for the step up in competition. After failing to get a finish in his last four, I just haven't really seen him prove to me that he's really ready for this upper echelon, this UFC talent. 4 fights ago when he's fighting Mikey Vatua, it's a 5-8 fighter that he's taken him to decision. We want to see him, see people tear up that regional scene before they come into this. And I think Drew Dober, like I said, being the veteran that he is, might just take this pretty easily. And I think we got a good price tag on him already at minus 130.
Yeah, man. Dober looked sensational before running into Islam, and Islam's been the most avoided fighter at 155. And, when you're a striker like Dober, that's a horrible matchup for you to take. And props to him for even taking that fight because a lot of guys won't. But before that, looked great, man. He did lose to Benil Dairouche, but the first round, man, he's putting it on Benny. And Benny notoriously just comes back like he always does, finds a submission in the second round. And, now he's the number 3 lightweight in the world. The win or the loss, not aging terribly. Then goes on to just dust Marco Polo Reyes in round 1. And somehow is a plus 265 against Nasrat. He's bouncing in and out perfectly, man. The dude just looks on point, counters a kick with the left hand and puts Nasrat out. And, we get another pretty decent price tag with him against Alexander Hernandez there. And the pace and pressure of Dober was just too much, man. He had Alexander Hernandez on his heels and was exhausting him and, was able to put him away as well. He's so clean in the pocket, man. He doesn't lose any of his technicality, even when he does want to brawl a little bit. He's so much more experienced in MMA than Brad Riddell is here. With Brad Riddell, always accompanying his teammates on the card. This is his 4th UFC fight. It's going to be the 3rd with, him being on the undercard of Israel. The other one was in New Zealand when he fought on the Dan Hooker card. And, when he was scheduled against Gregor Gillespie just a couple weeks ago, that was on the pay-per-view where Volkanovski was fighting Ortega. So, I hope it doesn't have a lot of pull on if it comes to decision like it does with like Kaikar France and some of the other guys out of City Kickboxing because, in the Mustafayev fight, he got taken down 8 times there in New Zealand and still happened to get a decision win. So the judges like these City Kickboxing guys. I hope it doesn't come down to it on Saturday. Brad Riddell, though, he's just as fun and technical on the feet, man. This guy is willing to throw down. He's got a great pull counter with the right hand, and he works the body well with his shots. You don't see Drew Dober wrestle a whole lot, but if there's a fight to come out and do it, man, he's way more versatile in mixed martial arts. Brad Riddell's given up at least 3 takedowns in every single one of his UFC fights so far. And, even on the feet, I don't think he's near as defensively sound with the Muay Thai striking as Drew Dober is. And, man, Dober's just been in there with the much higher level of competition. Like you said, Brad Riddell is not ready for this step up. And I think you're right. And a minus 130 on Drew Dober, man, I think it's going to come look real good on Saturday.
Yeah, and we've already locked in a 1.5 unit bet on that. I don't know if we brought that up, but that'll I think that's a really good play that we've already made.
And it seems to be creeping up a little bit, so something I'd probably hop on kind of quickly.
Mm-hmm. Our first fight on the main card, we go to the light heavyweight division where we see Paul the Bear Jew Craig, who's 14-4-1, taking on Jamahal Sweet Dreams Hill, who's 8-0. Paul Craig, he's training out as the Scottish Hit Squad. Not a lot of talent there with him, man. He's got 12 of his 14 wins by submission, 100% finish rate. And, I can't imagine that he changes up his game right here. I'm thinking that he's going to try and get this fight to the ground at all costs. You look over his record. He doesn't get hit well, He's suffered quite a few TKO losses, way more than I'd like to see. And Jamahal Hill, he's one of the more exciting additions to this light heavyweight division. He spent the majority of his camp getting work done at Extreme Couture with Eryk Nixick. And, he's smooth on the feet, man. He's one of the better strikers of the division and really has an understanding of how to, work the body, how to get back up to his feet. If this was a fight where Paul Craig had a nasty, calf kick, I might give him more of a chance, but I don't think that Paul Craig has that. And I think that he's been way over his head. I think Hill's gonna get the finish, and I'm kind of hoping that Paul Craig's still a little shaken up from that oil check that Shogun gave him,
For sure, man. With this fight opening up the pay-per-view, I think it's a perfect fight to open up the pay-per-view, man. It's killer. These guys have been beefing on social media, and I fully expect a finish from one of these guys on Saturday. Craig, he's got heart to the absolute just final bell. He's shown it multiple times, a slick submission game. And I don't care, like you said, what you got to do. Try to get this fight to the mat at all cost here, with he's not as strong as Stosic, but maybe with the longer frame, he might be able to find a little bit more success holding the heel down on the mat. But, you look through who he's fought recently and who he's beaten on this 3-fight win streak. Shogun's on the way out, man. He's tapping to strikes. And Vinicius Moreira and Antigulov are the worst light heavyweights the UFC has ever signed. They're on a combined 8-fight losing streak, 4 apiece there in the UFC. Just, they were garbage cans fed to guys who, when they needed to win. And On the other side, Jamahal Hill, man, the guy doesn't know how to lose here. He's 8-0 and he's looked flawless in a lot of his wins and should be 3-0 in the UFC. I think the marijuana no contest against Klidson Abreu was absolutely stupid. It's dumb as hell. And the guy, like you said, he understands how to use his boxing, how to work the body, how to use that 80-inch reach. You don't see him telegraphing his shots or loading up on it. He knows he's a light heavyweight, man. He can just touch you. He can just pepper you with that volume, and you're going to go down. He has 101 significant strikes landed, and the decision was Stosic. You see him land already 68 in that second round finish against, OSP, and 93 significant strikes in the second round finish on the Contender Series. There's not a lot of light heavyweights that can keep up that amount of volume and stuff. And man, I really do like what I see from Jamahal Hill. It kind of took me a little bit to get on that train, but for him to go out there and just dust OSP the way he did on the feet, not a lot of guys do that, man. And I think Jamahal Hill has a great frame for the division and a bright future going forward.
One other thing I think a lot of people kind of overlook is Jamahal Hill in that Stosic fight. He got taken down 6 times, but only spent less than half a round on his back, on getting controlled.
Yep.
Paul Craig, Mauricio Shogun Hua was finding his way back to his feet quite a few times, and I think that's something that Jamahal Hill is going to be able to do over and over. And eventually, Paul Craig's going to start lacking in his striking defense, and Jamal's going to pick him apart on the feet. I think we played Jamahal Hill at plus 135 by TKO, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was one of our easier plays of the night.
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
We move on to the welterweight division where we see Demian Maia, who's 28-10, taking on, remember the name, Belal Muhammad, who's 18-3. Demian Maia is 43-year-old looking to make his return after suffering a loss to one of the more recent title challengers in the division, and Gilbert Burns. I know we haven't really talked much about this fight, but I personally think that Maia's kind of live right here. He's always been that one-dimensional fighter, but it's taken him as far as getting the title shot, staying in the division for, over a decade. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that nothing's changed here at 43 years old. He's more than likely going to look to take the back and get the rear naked choke. Like most older fighters, he trains out of his own gym, which is not something that I personally like to see, but it is something that I've kind of come to terms with after breaking all these fights down. Belal, he's by far the superior boxer and wrestler here. And you got to know that he's pissed fighting on the undercard of Leon Edwards here. I know he wanted that rematch, and Leon's kind of brushed him off. Looking down Belal's record, though, he has yet to beat anyone on the same level as Maia. And in fact, every single time that he has stepped up to the competition that Maia's been competing with for the last decade, he's failed. Maybe not the same stylistic matchup, but it's definitely the same level, the caliber of competition that he's just not really living up to. He's training at a Chicago top team and Rufus Sport. And I got to imagine that the game plan here is to just not go on the mat at all. Maybe once Demian Maia really starts to slow and fatigue, he could get him on the mat, and as long as he stays on top, he'll be okay. But Demian Maia is not somebody that you want to risk being on the ground with. And if I were Belal, I would definitely try and stay on the feet and just pick him apart.
Yeah, man. Demian Maia been in the UFC since 2007, man, and he already tried to make that title run and came up short a couple of years ago. At 43 times, just not on his side anymore, but he has fought the best that the divisions have to offer in both middleweight and welterweight, man. And at 43 years old, he got chin checked against Gilbert Burns. He's been out for a little bit over a year. It's just not really things you like to see, for 43 years old. And I think he's probably just going to try to stay on the outside, maybe look to, to counter Belal. You don't ever see Demian Maia, leading any of the striking exchanges or anything like that. You're probably going to look for Belal to get, over aggressive, try to capitalize and run through him on the mat because Maia, he's not gonna out wrestle guys like Colby and Usman and Woodley, stuff like that. But you give him these mid-level welterweights and he gets on top of you, and it's his sub prop is always live, man. It puts an end to people really quickly with Belal, like you talked about, man. He might not have deserved that rematch or the Leon fight the first time around, but to lose it via eye poke and then to not get that rematch, to fight one fight before him on the same pay-per-view, it's got to sting a little bit, but stylistically for him, Bilal's getting just as big of a name as Leon Edwards, but definitely a step down for him and someone that can propel his name just as well. You talk about when Belal takes that step up, he loses, and you're right. But I don't know if at 43 years old you can really put Demian Maia on the level of those guys. And stylistically, Joanne, Jeff Neal, Luke, Leon, those are top-notch strikers of the division, and that's just something Demian Maia is not. You're right, Belal, huge advantage in the boxing. He puts on a pace that a lot of guys can't keep up with, and I think come round 3, Demian Maia won't be able to keep up with the pace. And man, Bilal's just, he does nothing at all great, but he does everything pretty decent and a little good. And he's a very well-rounded fighter. I'm going to probably be staying away because, man, the submission threat of Demian Maia is always live. And we've seen Belal fall, victim when he takes that step up in competition. But at 43 and, 11 years younger for Belal, you got to think that it's just his time to win this one, man.
I'm just not sold on him yet, man. Bilal's one of those guys that I'm ready to fade him, and I don't know. I agree with you that Demian Maia's way over the hill, but I said it sometime. I think it was Chase Hooper. BJJ, it's the ultimate equalizer, man. If Demian Maia does get his hands around him, it's going to be a long night for Belal, regardless if he's 43 or whatever. So I'm with you on laying off. We're taking that Demian Maia sub prop at like plus 450, whatever the hell it was on FanDuel. That's definitely the way to go.
The Jen and me will always take that sub prop of his.
For sure. The first of 3 5-rounders on the main card, we go to the welterweight division where we see Leon Rocky Edwards, who's 18-3, taking on Nate Diaz, who's 20-12. Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz, two of the more polarizing figures in MMA. Leon's coming off that eye poke that he practically shrugged off against Belal Muhammad, and he's currently on the longest active winning streak in the division other than the champion Kamaru Usman. Looking back over his record, the longer he kind of holds out, the less impressive his record's starting to look, man. And to be honest with you, a win over Nate Diaz isn't going to necessarily beef it up any. Leon, he's the sharper, faster striker here, but a striker nonetheless. And for Nate Diaz, he's the king of getting these favorable stylistic matchups. I looked down his record, and he hasn't had to worry about a takedown since he fought RDA in 2014. He's a fan favorite, but honestly, I think he's holding on to this UFC contract, staying in this upper echelon of the division just by a thread, man. I take a look at that top 10, and I think he loses to every single person on that top 10 list. He's kind of developed into this Homer Simpson of MMA where he takes a lot of beating, and then maybe his cardio will start winning him over. And that's probably his best chance to win here, is to kind of have a similar fight to the Cowboy Cerrone one where he endures a lot of initial damage and then maybe starts pouring it on. I don't see that happening, and I think the odds makers have it relatively right at Leon Edwards sitting at the heavy favorite here.
I'm with you, man. Leon Edwards should probably take this one pretty easy on Saturday, but at 170, man, he's been the most difficult guy to get a fight for, and you really can't just put it, strictly on his opponents either. He's been pretty picky, and you're going to have to bully him and take him out of the rankings in order to get him to fight people like Hamzat and stuff.
Right.
But you combine that with the first COVID cancellation being the UFC Europe or UFC London that he was going to get to headline, the eye poke with Belal. It's just been a rough 2-year stretch for Leon, man, and somehow Nate Diaz falls into your lap. Nate Diaz, it's king of cardio and durability, but you're right, man. The guy gets beat up way too much. He puts on, like you said, a good, nice pace, good pressure, stays in you with the dirty boxing, but he doesn't have the power to really put you away. And he's really stationary, really hittable. He's heavy on that lead leg, and everybody's able to tear him up there. And this is the first time Nate Diaz is getting a real welterweight since he got ragdolled by Roy McDonald, man. It's, he's been lucky to get the 2 lightweights or a couple lightweights that have just met him at welterweight there. With Leon, extremely well-rounded, man. His wrestling's underrated, and he's one of my favorite people to watch from southpaw. The left hand is so accurate. He has great footwork, and he hides the kicks very well, and he's one of the most dangerous guys in the clinch. It's not so much while he's in the clinch, But when you exit the clinch with Leon, he always makes you pay with something. Usually the elbow's going to cut you up, and Nate Diaz is probably one of the easiest people to cut up in the UFC. Um, I really think the body kick of Leon Edwards is going to be the difference in this fight. That Leon's just too nasty from southpaw, man, and the body kick I think is what's going to find the finish come round 4 for Leon. Man, I'm gonna take my chance and call that one, but you're right. At minus 550, 600, whatever it is, might be appropriate for Leon.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I'll be a fan if Nate Diaz comes back in this fight. He is I get why he's a fan favorite, because when he does start to put that pressure on, you can literally feel the tides turning in
Yeah.
the octagon, and it's a really easy one to kind of get behind and get hype about. So as far as betting on this fight, I think we are going to lay off on this one from putting Leon in any type of parlay. I wouldn't be surprised, and I also wouldn't hate if Nate Diaz spoiled the party on Saturday.
Kamaru Usman probably wouldn't hate that too much either.
No, that would be Kamaru Usman's dream right there. Moving on to our co-main event of the evening, we go to the flyweight division where we see Deiveson Figueiredo, who's 21-1, taking on the assassin baby BrandonMoreno, who's 18-5-2. This is a rematch, and watching their fight back, man, it'll get you fired up.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not for the best reasons. At the end of that at the end of that fight, I came out of it thinking that Figueiredo is a dirty ass Brazilian fighter, man. He fit the mold, man. He really did. And it almost cost him that fight. It definitely shouldn't have been a draw if that point deduction didn't happen. And that fifth round is definitely questionable, but I'm not upset with the draw, right?
By no
I,
means.
I think that Figueiredo, as far as 125 pounds goes, he's about as scary as it gets. And up until that last fight, he's looked like the Terminator walking his opponents down. He's got dynamite in his hands and grip strength to really finish the submission if he does lock it up. But somebody's going to catch him with his hands down, dude. And that's why I am more than happy to put the casual cap on the line and take BrandonMoreno here as the underdog. He showed a tremendous amount of heart in that first fight and really showed up for the big stage. I would agree that nothing on his resume would really justify him winning this fight other than that Formiga win. But I just have a feeling, man. I just have a feeling. BrandonMoreno, he landed twice as many takedowns as Figueiredo, which I think he's going to go back to more and more. And like I said, Figueiredo, he just doesn't respect his opponents. And I think that Moreno is going to come up with a game plan that when he does find Figgy kind of letting his guard down like that, he's going to make him pay. And something that I've really, really liked and I think is absolutely insane is Moreno by TKO at plus 1,100. He had Figgy hurt like 3 or 4 times in that fight. Like Fig is not indestructible by any means, and he's lucky he got some of those point deductions, some of those eye pokes that kind of changed the momentum of the fight, because Moreno, he has got a shot here, and they are counting him out. He's faced these powerful guys in the past where he has mixed in those takedowns. Like you look at the Ryan Benoit fight where he lands 5 takedowns, the Alexander Pantoja fight, 2 takedowns, Sergio Pettis fight, another striker, 4 takedowns. I got to think that he has figured out a game plan for Figueiredo here. And I think that it's going to be a long night and it's time for the 27-year-old to shine. I'm going with the Mexican pride right here, BrandonMoreno.
Yeah, man, and wearing this damn hat 3 weeks in a row, I'll happily accept the minus 250 favorite in Deiveson for our challenge. But you're right, he looked like the Terminator, man, and Moreno kind of brought him back down to earth in that first fight there. He looked like a world beater prior to that. Looked like a pound for pound great. He was just walking through every shot Pantoja had. Just walking him down, dropping Pantoja with his bombs. You see him make quick work of Tim Elliott and Alex Perez, good wrestlers who just want to leave their neck out with a strong guillotine. And I mean, what he did to Joe Benavidez twice was practically criminal, man. The guy walks you down with a ton of forward pressure, backs you down against the cage, and makes you work a lot being on your heels. And he's got a really stiff jab. And like you said, when his hands are down, the guy just really disrespects people's power. But at the same time, he's got a good timing, and able to avoid your shots to be able to land that right hand. It just kind of kind of loads up on some of those shots, and Brandon Moreno, being a little faster guy, is able to beat him to some of those punches. With Brandon Moreno, man, last person selected on Ultimate Fighter, first one eliminated, cut by the UFC at one point. To claw his way back to find himself in a second UFC championship fight, how can you not cheer for the guy, man? He's an inspiration to anybody, who's trying to make their way into the UFC. On his 6 fight streak right now, man, 4 wins, 2 draws. He's got a draw with arguably the best flyweight right now in Figueiredo, and he's got a draw with the next person who's probably going to challenge for the belt, Askar Askarov. Brandon Moreno has proven, man, that right now he belongs to the top of the game, and he's willing to throw down with Figgy, which you don't see a lot of people willing to do, man. He's got a great left hook to the body. He's got a sneaky head kick that he can get in there. And I think you're right, man. I think you should lean on the wrestling more here to try to zap the energy of Figgy, take some of those weapons away. But I saw a couple things, rewatching, and Brandon Moreno did not check a single calf kick. And after come 2.5, 3 rounds, Deiveson went away from it, man. And I think that's a big weapon that if he sticks through, for 5 rounds, it's something that could really take a toll on Brandon Moreno. But, it's nothing new to see fighters abandon the calf kick after having success with it early. We see it all the time. But Deiveson also had a ton of success with his lead left hook. He would almost lure Moreno into thinking he's going to throw the right hand, and he would lunge in with the left hook that kind of caught him off guard. So I think if he can sharpen up those two specific little aspects, I think Deiveson Figueiredo is going to find the finish on Brandon Moreno. But, man, I know I talked to you about that round 5 being the most decisive one for Figueiredo, and I found it hard, that one judge gave it to Moreno, but I'm so happy to see this rematch. It was one of the best fights that we're going to see the whole year, and I expect fireworks in the second fight as well.
Yeah, and one more thing, I know a lot of people like to blame even the closeness of that fight on Figueiredo going to the hospital, having food poisoning, whatever the hell, the night before. I promise you, Moreno wasn't 100% going into that fight either. Every fighter deals with it. It's not something to fall back on. And Figgy looked fucking fine in there to go 5 rounds with another high-level athlete. So in my mind, that fight was even Stevens going in there. I like this. Like I said, it's just a feeling. I really do think Moreno's got this one in the bag.
And one thing I want to mention, I know you said you're, I think, plus 1,100 prop for Moreno TKO that stands out to you. We've seen Figueiredo submit good wrestlers with his guillotine before. And, if Moreno is going to come in there with that wrestling heavy attack, I think the Figueiredo plus 900 submission is a line that's a little bit too wide as well.
I love that too. I'll probably be taking a stab on that as well. In our main event, we have Israel, the last stylebender Adesanya, who's 20-1, taking on the Italian dream MarvinVettori, who's 17-3-1. Izzy's looking to bounce back after suffering his first career loss to Jan Blachowicz. Before then, he was clearing out that 185 division with ease, and that's with one exception, and that's this rematch right here against MarvinVettori. One thing's for certain is Izzy has definitely set himself apart as the best striker in the division by a long shot. He's training out of City Kickboxing, where we do see majority strikers come from. But there is one thing that worries me. I have watched a few of the embeddeds leading up to this, and it looks like he's still carrying a little bit of that light heavyweight extra weight. He looks, and it's not by much, right? I just don't think that he's going to be coming in here a couple pounds under the 185-pound limit like we have seen in the past. Where MarvinVettori, it's kind of crazy every single time we break him down, getting reminded how young he is. Yeah. Only 27 years old and only 24 years old in the first meetup. Man, these are the years where he is making huge strides in his game, or at least should be making huge strides in his game to continue his career in the UFC. He's since losing that fight to Izzy, he's strung together a 5-fight win streak, 4 of those coming by decision, which usually would make that a pretty tough road to get to a title. But thankfully, it is the 185-pound division that is a little bit weak right now. He's training out of King's MMA, and I kind of mark him as one of those guys similar to, like you said, Belal Muhammad, who's good at everything but not great at anything. He's able to out-wrestle the pure strikers in the division, and he's able to outstrike the pure grapplers in the division. Ultimately, I think that this fight is going to go pretty similarly to the first fight. Although I don't think that MarvinVettori is going to be as successful with the takedowns, especially when it comes to the later rounds, and we see Vettori kind of wearing out as the fight goes on. How are you seeing this one?
Yeah, man, I see it the exact same way. Since that rematch in 2018, both of them have gone on to do great things. Israel capturing the belt in record time, and Marvin not losing a fight since then. But Israel's kind of said it. Marvin kind of holds on to that split decision loss as better than any win of his career. And he's kind of chased that the way I saw like Diego Ferreira chase the rematch with Benny Dairouche and stuff. Um, you just got to move on and move forward, and hope. Thank God it's not got in the way of him winning any of those other fights going forward. With Izzy, man, he's one of my favorite fighters to watch. Man, he maybe not just the division. He could be the best striker in the UFC right now. The guy fights so well off his jab. Everything is set up off of it. Great footwork, and he knows how to beat you up, just from the outside. He switches levels with his kicks, makes you get desperate coming forward. And when you have to close that distance, he's just twice the striker of any of these guys. He's also got, the body kick that's lined up with Vettori here, the way it was Paulo Costa. He's going to be able to wear out the body and eventually go up and slip that head kick up high, I think, which could cause Marvin some issues here. With, since that meeting, Israel's fought the best of the division, where Marvin Vettori, his, win streak only includes one win over a top 10 middleweight, and that's Jack Hermanson. He's not had to fight a Costa, a Cannonier, a Till, a Brunson, a Gastelum, any of these people. You know how I feel about Kevin Holland. That shouldn't get you a title shot, but you're right. With the way the middleweight division is, and then matching all these guys up, Marvin Vettori has found himself with the rematch here. He's fights with just like a chip on his shoulder, so aggressive that he puts on a lot of volume and a lot of pace and pressure. It gets in your face, but come round 5 and round 4, man, his gas tank is a little iffy there, and man, on the feet, he's just outclassed. And at UFC 243, he Israel KO'd Whitaker. At UFC 253, Izzy KO's Costa, and at UFC 263. We've already released a play on it. Israel Adesanya is going to KO Marvin Vettori, man. He's got 25 minutes to do it. And after dropping that first professional loss up a weight class, trying to become the UFC's 5th double champ, Izzy's coming out here to prove a statement, man. And he's pissed that Marvin Vettori even thinks he had a chance in that first fight. I think Israel's super live to get the TKO here, man.
I definitely love when we can agree on the main event and that we already made the play. Just further solidifies it. I think we both see this going the same way. So I love it.
Absolutely, man. The co-main event there, the rematch for the flyweights, that's what we're going to go as the challenge there, and I'll happily accept the massive favorite here on my little losing streak. But, man, is there a fight that you think everybody needs to pay attention for?
Yeah, it's gonna have to be the casual cap challenge. I love the Figueiredo versus Moreno fight. That's gonna be an absolute banger and one that I think that will surprise a lot of people. What about you?
Yeah, man, you don't really typically see two flyweights that are game to throw down the way those two are. And yeah, I'm typically not asking to see a flyweight rematch, but this one, most absolutely.
Ask me in 2018 if I want to even see a title challenge at 125, and I'd laugh at you, man. I've been a hater of the 125-pound division for so long, so it is nice to see some fighters that I'm actually pumped to see fight.
I don't see it being the most competitive fight. I do lean someone pretty heavy, but I think there's a lot of hype surrounding the Movsar and Hakeem Dawodu fight. It's the striker versus grappler. We're going to see which martial art, prevails there. If I got to pick a fighter, throughout this entire card here, it's going to be the champ in Israel Adesanya for me. You got him, suffering his first pro loss, now having to come back. He's gotten someone he's beaten before, but someone that gave him, someone gave him a really good tough test, man. And I think Israel's out to make a statement on Saturday. I think people should be watching him. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to go with our boy Luigi Vendramini. Definitely going to shock the world. I mean, coming in as an underdog, I think he's getting wildly disrespected here. I think we think he's getting wildly disrespected here, and I'm looking forward to it, man. I really am.
For sure. As my best underdog play that I think is out there was a minus 110, plus 100. Now we see her at plus 120s and plus 130s. Man, Lauren Murphy has an absolute ton of value there as an underdog with that grappling upside, the strength advantage that she's going to have. And she's just hit her stride as of late, man.
Love it. It's hard for me to lay off my boy Luigi. He's going to have to be my underdog play as well. I think, like I said, he's going to shock the world, and we just got to sit here and wait.
Yeah, and I think your best bet of the night's actually a plus money bet as well.
It sure is. It's Jamahal Hill inside or Jamahal Hill by TKO at plus 135. Paul Craig doesn't like getting hit, and Jamahal Hill hits really well. So I think that that'll be an easy TKO. What about yourself?
For me, the best bet, man, is going to be Drew Dober. It's two strikers versus each other here. I think one, and Drew Dober is twice as defensively sound as Riddell. He's got twice MMA experience. And although you don't see him mixing it up too much, with the wrestling, he's absolutely got that in his wheelhouse if he wants to unleash that on Saturday.
Nice, nice. I love it.
And that concludes UFC 263. Broke down all the fights. I know we left out Camacho and Terrence McKinney, which was a short notice fight here put together. So I'm not going to cover that one, but I do expect that one to be fireworks as well. We're agreeing on the main event here this week, but hop in those comments and let us know who you got in the rematch there between Figgy and Moreno. I appreciate you guys watching. Let's catch some tickets.
Peace.